We need to talk about the breach, Maya. My supervisor's voice was too calm, too rehearsed. I looked up from my desk to find him standing there with Amanda from HR and two people I'd never seen before. Serious faces. The kind that meant trouble, and my stomach dropped, but I kept my expression neutral. What breach? Conference room. Now. He didn't wait for my response, just turned and walked away. The others followed like a funeral procession. I saved my work and stood slowly, aware that every eye in the office was now watching me. My colleague Marcus looked concerned. My desk neighbor Bethany pretended to be focused on her screen, but I could see her tracking my movement in her monitor's reflection. The walk to the conference room felt endless. My mind raced through possibilities. I was a systems analyst. I had access to sensitive data. But I'd never violated protocol, never cut corners, never taken risks. The conference room door closed behind me with a soft click that sounded like a prison gate. Inside, a laptop was already open on the table, screen facing the empty chair clearly meant for me. My supervisor, Derek Walsh, gestured for me to sit. Amanda positioned herself near the door. The two suited strangers stood on either side of Derek like bodyguards. "This is Malcolm Pierce and Veronica Strand from our legal compliance team," Derek said. His voice had that dangerous softness people use when they're about to ruin your life. "They've been investigating a security incident." I sat down carefully, hands in my lap. "Okay." Malcolm opened a folder. "Last Tuesday, someone accessed our client database using elevated administrator privileges. Sensitive financial records were copied to an external drive. The access logs show your credentials were used." My heart hammered against my ribs. "That's impossible." "Is it?" Derek's eyebrow lifted slightly. He was enjoying this. I could see it in the way his mouth twitched, fighting back a smile. "The timestamps match your shift. The access point was your workstation. Then someone used my credentials without my knowledge," I said. My voice stayed steady even as my pulse thundered in my ears. Veronica exchanged a glance with Malcolm. They'd expected denial, but not this kind. "We're trying to make this easy for you," Derek said, leaning forward. His cologne was too strong in the enclosed space, making my head hurt. "If you admit what happened and help us understand why, we can keep this internal. No police. No criminal charges. Just a quiet resignation and a mutual non-disclosure agreement." I stared at him. "You want me to confess to something I didn't do. We want you to take responsibility." Amanda's voice was gentle, almost maternal. "Maya, you've been under a lot of stress lately. Your father's illness, the medical bills. People make mistakes when they're desperate." Rage flashed through me, hot and immediate. How dare she weaponize my father's cancer against me? How dare she turn my family's pain into evidence of guilt? But I didn't let it show. Instead, I looked directly at Derek. "I need to see those logs." He blinked. "That's not how this works. If my credentials were used, I have a right to see the evidence." I kept my tone professional, almost bored. Inside, I was calculating. Derek's confidence felt rehearsed. Amanda's sympathy felt scripted. This entire meeting had been choreographed before I walked in. They'd already decided I was guilty. The question was, why me? Malcolm closed his folder with deliberate precision. "We're not obligated to share investigation details with a suspect." "Am I a suspect or am I being accused?" "Yes." "Because those are two different things." Veronica's eyes narrowed slightly. She hadn't expected me to know the distinction. "But let them underestimate me. Let them think I'd panic and break. We're giving you a chance to make this right," Derek said. His jaw tightened. I was supposed to be crying by now. Apologizing. Begging. "But that window closes today. If you don't cooperate, we'll have no choice but to pursue formal charges." I let the silence stretch. They wanted desperation. Fear. Instead, I gave them nothing. Finally, I spoke. "I want to consult with an attorney before saying anything else." The room's temperature seemed to drop. Amanda's sympathetic expression cracked. Malcolm's fingers drummed once against his folder. Derek's face went red. "That's unnecessary," he said quickly. "We're trying to help you. Then you'll have no problem with me seeking legal advice." I stood up, smooth and unhurried. My legs felt like water, but I didn't let it show. "Am I free to leave?" Nobody moved to stop me. But as I reached the door, Derek's voice followed me out. "Your access has been suspended pending investigation. Security will escort you to collect your personal items." 2 security guards were already waiting outside the conference room. Professional, polite, utterly impersonal. The entire office watched as I was marched back to my desk like a criminal. I didn't look at anyone. Didn't explain. Just quietly packed my few personal items into the cardboard box security provided. Coffee mug from my university. The small succulent plant my father had given me last Christmas. A framed photo of my family from before the diagnosis. Marcus started to stand, probably to say something supportive, but I shook my head slightly. "Don't." He sat back down, looking miserable. The walk to the elevator felt eternal. Every step was a humiliation. Every whisper behind me was a conviction. By tomorrow, everyone would believe I was a thief, criminal, someone who'd betrayed the company's trust. But as the elevator doors closed, I felt something unexpected. Not fear, anger. Because I knew something Derek didn't realize I knew. Something I discovered 3 months ago and documented carefully, thinking it was just a system glitch that needed reporting. The access monitoring framework had a vulnerability. And I was the only one who knew how to prove it. I sat in my car for 20 minutes before I could trust myself to drive. My hands shook as I pulled out my phone. The first call was to my father, just to hear his voice. I didn't tell him what happened. He had enough to worry about. The second call was to my college roommate, Simone, who'd graduated law school 2 years ago and now worked at a firm downtown. "Maya." Her voice was warm with surprise. "This is unexpected. Everything okay?" "I need a lawyer," I said. My voice cracked slightly on the word. "I've been accused of a data breach at work." There was a pause. Then, "Did you do it?" "No." "Okay." No hesitation. No doubt. Just belief. "Don't talk to anyone from the company. Don't answer calls or emails. Come to my office right now and we'll figure this out." I drove to her office building in a daze. The city looked different somehow, sharper and colder. At traffic lights I kept checking my rearview mirror, paranoid that I was being followed. When I finally reached Simone's office, she took one look at my face and pulled me into a hug. "Breathe," she said. "We're going to fight this." For the first time that day I let myself believe her. In Simone's office, I laid out everything. The ambush meeting. The confident accusations. The pressure to confess. The threat of criminal charges. "They're trying to railroad you," Simone said, taking notes. "The fact that they offered a quiet resignation deal before even completing their investigation is suspicious. What do you know about the actual breach?" "Only what they told me in the meeting. Someone accessed the client database last Tuesday using my credentials. Copied files to an external drive." Simone tapped her pen against her notepad. "Were you at work last Tuesday?" "Yes, but I never accessed those files." Paused, thinking back. "Actually, last Tuesday I was in back-to-back meetings most of the day. I barely had time to check email, let alone access secure databases." "Can you prove that?" "The meetings were on my calendar. There should be conference room logs, maybe even security camera footage of me physically being in those rooms when the breach supposedly happened." Simone smiled. "Good. That's very good. What else?" I hesitated, then pulled out my personal laptop. "There's something else. Something I discovered a few months ago that I don't think anyone else knows about. 3 months earlier, I'd been running routine diagnostics on our access monitoring system. It was part of my job to make sure the logs were accurate and complete. That's when I noticed something strange. Administrator-level access was being granted through a backdoor override. Not a hack. Not an external intrusion. An internal command that bypassed normal authentication protocols. At first, I thought it was a glitch. But when I dug deeper, I found a pattern. The override had been used multiple times over the past year, always late at night, always for brief periods. I documented everything. Screenshots, log files, timestamps. I'd saved it all to my personal cloud storage, planning to report it through proper channels once I understood what I was looking at. I never got the chance. Now, as I showed Simone the files, her eyes widened. Maya, this is huge. This proves your credentials could have been compromised through this vulnerability. It's more than that, I said quietly. The override command requires executive-level system knowledge. Most people in IT don't even know it exists. Derek designed the Access framework 5 years ago when he was still a senior analyst. Simone looked up sharply. Are you saying your supervisor is the one who created this backdoor? I'm saying he's one of the few people who would know how to use it. That night I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Derek's face in the conference room, that barely concealed satisfaction. He'd wanted me to panic, to confess, to make it easy for him. Why me specifically? That question haunted me. I got up at 3 a.m. and opened my laptop, reviewing old emails and project files. There had to be a pattern. A reason. That's when I found it. 6 weeks ago, Derek had asked me to review some irregular access patterns in the system. He'd framed it as a security audit, nothing urgent. I'd compiled a report showing several instances of unusual administrator activity, including the use of that backdoor override. I'd sent him the report. He'd thanked me and said he'd follow up with the security team. He'd never mentioned it again. Now, looking at the dates, I felt my blood run cold. The breach I was being accused of happened exactly 3 days after I'd sent Derek that report. 3 days after I'd unknowingly documented evidence of his unauthorized access. He wasn't framing me because I was convenient. He was framing me because I'd gotten too close to the truth. The next morning, Simone called with news. The company sent a formal suspension letter to your home address. It says you're barred from company property and systems pending the completion of their investigation. Did they mention criminal charges? Not yet. But they did include a strongly worded paragraph about the consequences of destroying evidence or interfering with their investigation. Pause. Maya, they're going to come at you hard. We need to be ready. What do we do? First, we respond formally. I'll draft a letter asserting your innocence and demanding full access to the evidence they claim to have. Second, we gather our own evidence. You said you were in meetings last Tuesday. I need names, times, and any documentation you have. I pulled up my calendar and started reading off my schedule. 9 a.m. to 10:30, quarterly review meeting with the analytics team. 11 a.m. to noon, client presentation prep. 1 p.m. to 3 p.m., new employee security training session. 3:30 p.m. to 4:30 p.m., one-on-one with Derek. Simone's pen stopped mid-scratch. You had a private meeting with your supervisor on the day of the breach? He wanted to discuss my performance review. I frowned, trying to remember details. He seemed distracted, kept checking his phone. The meeting ended early. What time did it end? Around 4 p.m., maybe 4:15. Simone was quiet for a moment. And what time did they say the breach occurred? They didn't give me a specific time. Just said it was Tuesday during my shift. We need to find out exactly when. Because if it happened during one of those meetings, you have an airtight alibi. Simone filed our formal response on Friday. By Monday, the company's legal team sent back a scathing reply. They accused me of deflecting responsibility and attempting to obstruct justice. They claimed their evidence was irrefutable and that my refusal to cooperate would result in criminal prosecution. But they still didn't provide the actual evidence. They're bluffing, Simone said when I called her in a panic after reading the letter. If their case was as solid as they claim, they'd be working with law enforcement already, not sending threatening letters through their corporate lawyers. So what do? We call their bluff. I'm filing a formal request for all access logs, security footage, and incident reports related to the alleged breach. If they refuse, We'll know they're hiding something. That afternoon, something unexpected happened. Marcus, my former colleague, sent me an encrypted message through a personal email account. They're pressuring all of us to sign statements saying you'd been acting suspiciously. No one's doing it. We know you. This doesn't add up. Also, Derek's been in the server room a lot lately. After hours. Thought you should know. I forwarded the message to Simone immediately. The company responded to our evidence request with a partial release. They sent over heavily redacted access logs that showed my credentials being used to access the client database at 4:47 p.m. last Tuesday. 4:47 p.m. During my meeting with Derek, I called Simone immediately. This is it. This proves I couldn't have done it. I was in Derek's office at 4:47. Can you prove it? He's my supervisor. He'd have to confirm it. There was a long pause. Maya, think about that. Would Derek confirm an alibi that destroys his case against you? She was right. Derek would lie. Course he would. But there had to be another way to prove where I was. That's when I remembered. Derek's office had a security camera. Not inside the office itself, but in the hallway outside, pointing at his door. It logged everyone who entered and exited. The company used it to track executive floor access. The hallway camera, I said. It would show me entering and leaving Derek's office. That would prove the timeline. Simone made a note. That's good. We'll request that footage specifically. But I had another thought, one that made my hands go cold. If Derek used my credentials while I was in his office, that means he accessed the system from his own computer. There should be a record of which physical workstation made the breach. Would the logs show that? Kept scrolling through logs. Then I noticed something I'd missed before. The access logs showed not just user credentials but also the physical workstation ID. When my credentials were used during the breach, the workstation ID was listed as EXC087. I cross-referenced the company's equipment database. C087 was registered to Derek Walsh. I've got him, I said. The breach came from Derek's computer. He used my credentials from his own workstation. Simone was quiet for a moment. That's it. That's what we need. I'm requesting an emergency meeting with the company's board of directors. The board meeting happened the following Thursday. Simone and I sat on one side of a long conference table. Across from us were 3 board members, the company's general counsel, and Malcolm Pierce from compliance. Derek wasn't present, which Simone had insisted on. Thank you for seeing us on short notice, Simone began. We're here because my client has been falsely accused of a data breach she didn't commit. Not only can we prove her innocence, but we can also identify the actual perpetrator. She laid out everything methodically. The timeline proving I was in Derek's office during the breach. The security footage showing an unknown person entering Derek's office. The workstation ID proving the breach came from Derek's computer. The pattern of unauthorized access matched to Trevor's suspicious cash deposits. The board members' faces grew progressively more serious as Simone spoke. The general counsel looked like she wanted to sink through the floor. These are serious allegations, one board member said finally. Do you have documentation to support all of this? They should. Unless someone deleted that information. While we waited for the company's response, I did something risky. I reached out to another former colleague, Tyler, who worked in physical security. We'd been hired the same year and had stayed friendly even though we worked in different departments. I messaged him through a gaming app we both used. Usual. Nothing that would seem suspicious if anyone was monitoring my communications. Hey, random question. Do you know how long the company keeps hallway camera footage? His response came an hour later. 90 days usually. Why? Just curious about something from a few weeks ago. Weird timing. Someone from legal just requested a bunch of footage from last month. Came down as priority. Had to pull like 6 different cameras. My heart raced. Which cameras? Executive floor, hallway, parking garage, server room, couple others. They seemed really interested in the executive floor stuff though. They were already securing the footage. But was it to preserve evidence or to destroy it? I thanked Tyler and immediately called Simone. They're pulling security footage right now. If that footage proves I was in Derek's office during the breach, they might delete it. Then we need to move fast, Simone said. I'm filing an emergency preservation order. If the company destroys evidence after we've formally requested it, that's spoliation. It would destroy their entire case. The preservation order went through on Wednesday. By Thursday morning, Simone received a furious call from the company's lead attorney, demanding to know why we were harassing them with legal motions when they were conducting a good faith investigation. Good faith. Simone's voice was ice. You've accused my client of a crime, suspended her without pay, and refused to provide complete evidence. Now we're discovering you're actively pulling security footage that would prove her innocence. That's not good faith. That's a cover-up. There was heated back and forth. Eventually, the attorney agreed to preserve all footage and provide the hallway camera recordings from the executive floor. They sent the files over that afternoon. Simone called me immediately. You need to see this. I went to her office. She had the footage queued up on her computer. This is last Tuesday, 3:30 p.m. That's when your meeting with Derek started, correct? I watched myself walk down the hallway and enter Derek's office. The timestamp was clear. 3:31 p.m. Simone fast-forwarded. And here's when you left. I watched my past self exit Derek's office, checking my phone as I walked away. The timestamp read 4:52 p.m. I was in there during the entire breach window, I said softly. I couldn't have been at my desk at 4:47. Correct. But there's something else. Simone rewound the footage. Watch this. At 4:43, someone else enters Derek's office. I squinted at the screen. A figure in a dark jacket, face turned away from the camera, slipped into Derek's office and emerged 3 minutes later. Who is that? I asked. Simone zoomed in on the timestamp. That's what we need to find out. Over the weekend, I couldn't stop thinking about that figure on the security footage. Derek's office. During the breach. While I was sitting right there discussing my performance review. Had someone come in while I was there? I tried to remember. The meeting had been awkward. Derek had seemed distracted, kept checking his phone. At one point someone knocked on the door. Derek had gotten up quickly, said something like, "Give me a minute," and stepped outside briefly. I'd assumed it was just another employee with a question, but now I wondered. Had that person handed Derek something? An external drive maybe. I called Simone on Sunday evening. I think someone handed Derek the drive during my meeting. He stepped outside for less than a minute. When he came back, he seemed nervous. That would make sense, Simone said. He creates the breach using your credentials from his computer, then immediately has someone remove the physical evidence from the office. By the time anyone investigates, the drive is gone and all the digital evidence points to you. But who was the person in the hallway? I've been working on that. I had the video analyzed by a digital forensic specialist. Based on height, build and gait analysis, he thinks it's a man, approximately 5 feet 10 inches, left-handed based on how he reached for the door handle. That's not much to go on. Well, but it's a start. Does Derek work closely with anyone who matches that description? I thought about Derek's usual associates. His assistant, Bryce. But Bryce is taller. Maybe 6 feet 2 inches. Anyone else? Then it hit me. Trevor Moss. He's in vendor management, but he and Derek are close. They go to lunch together constantly. Trevor's about 5 feet 10 inches, and I'm pretty sure he's left-handed. Simone did some digging. Trevor Moss had been with the company for 3 years. Clean record. No complaints. But when she looked at his financial history, something interesting appeared. He's been making large cash deposits, Simone said during our Monday morning call. 8 deposits over the past 6 months, each between $3,000 and $5,000. Always cash. Always timed just under the $10,000 reporting threshold. Someone's paying him. And try not to leave a paper trail. The question is, paying him for what? Access to client data, I said slowly. The pieces were clicking together. Derek creates the vulnerability in the system. He uses it to steal client information. He pays Trevor to help him move the data and cover their tracks. But then I stumble onto evidence of the backdoor access. Derek panics. He needs a scapegoat, and I'm convenient. Fit. But we need proof. Right now, all we have is suspicious timing and a blurry video. What if we could prove Derek was accessing systems he shouldn't have been? My original report showed unauthorized administrator activity going back months. If we could match those access times to Trevor's cash deposits. Simone was quiet for a moment. That would establish a pattern. But we'd need the complete access logs, not the redacted version they sent us. I kept my own copies, I admitted. Before I was suspended, I'd been monitoring the system because of the irregularities I found. I saved everything to my personal cloud storage. Maya, that might be considered proprietary company data. It's also evidence of a crime. And I'm the one being accused. Don't I have a right to defend myself? Simone sighed. Yes. But we need to be very careful about how we use it. I pulled up my archived files. Months of access logs, meticulously organized by date and user. I started cross-referencing the timestamps of suspicious administrator activity with Trevor's banking records. The pattern was undeniable. Every time there was unauthorized access to sensitive client data, Trevor made a cash deposit within 48 hours. 8 incidents, 8 deposits. The most recent deposit was $4,200, made 2 days before I'd sent Derek my security audit report. They were getting ready to do another one, I said to Simone. But my report spooked Derek. He realized someone was noticing the pattern. So he had to shut me down before I could dig deeper. This is solid circumstantial evidence, Simone said. But we need something more direct. Something that ties Derek to the actual breach. Simone slid a thick folder across the table. Complete access logs, security footage, financial records, and sworn statements from my client. Everything you need to conduct a proper investigation. Why didn't Ms. Rivera bring this to our attention sooner? Another board member asked. Because she didn't realize what she was looking at until after she was accused, Simone replied. And by then, she'd been locked out of all systems and threatened with criminal prosecution if she didn't confess to something she didn't do. The silence in the room was heavy. The board launched an immediate internal investigation. Derek and Trevor were both suspended pending review. The company hired an outside forensic team to analyze every piece of evidence. It took 2 weeks. 2 weeks of waiting, hoping, trying not to think about what would happen if they didn't believe us. Finally, the call came. The forensic team had confirmed everything. Derek had been using the backdoor override to access client data for over a year. Trevor had been helping him move and sell the information. They'd stolen financial records from 34 different clients and sold them to various criminal organizations. The breach I'd been accused of was just their most recent theft. When I'd submitted my security audit report, Derek had panicked. He'd staged the breach to look like my doing, planning to have me fired and possibly prosecuted before I could uncover the full scope of his crimes. They're pressing criminal charges against both of them, Simone told me over the phone. Her voice was triumphant. Federal charges. Data theft, fraud, conspiracy. They're looking at serious prison time. I should have felt vindicated. Instead, I just felt tired. What happens to me now? I asked. The company wants to reinstate you immediately. Full back pay, public apology, promotion. They're terrified you're going to sue them. Are we going to sue them? Simone paused. That's up to you. You have grounds. They failed to protect their own systems, falsely accused you, attempted to coerce a confession, and put you through hell. You could probably get a substantial settlement. Thought about it. About Derek's satisfied smile in that conference room. About the security guards walking me out while my colleagues watched. About all the sleepless nights wondering if my life was over. Yes, I said. We're suing them. The lawsuit was filed 3 days later. Wrongful termination, defamation, intentional infliction of emotional distress, and negligent supervision. We weren't asking for a specific amount. Simone said that made juries more generous. The company tried to settle immediately. Their first offer was $100,000 and a confidential agreement. Simone laughed and sent back a counteroffer. $2 million, a public statement acknowledging my innocence and their failures, and a complete overhaul of their security protocols with me consulting on the new system. They accepted within 24 hours. The public statement went out the next week. The company acknowledged that I had been wrongfully accused, that I'd acted with integrity throughout, and that their security failures and supervisory negligence had led to a substantial data breach. They thanked me for my role in helping identify and stop the criminal activity, and my name was cleared. Completely. Publicly. Derek's mugshot appeared in news articles about corporate data theft. Trevor's did too. The story made national headlines. Company executives steal millions in client data, frame innocent employee. I didn't feel sorry for them. Not even a little bit. The settlement money hit my account on a Friday morning. I stared at the number for a long time, not quite believing it was real. My father was getting the best cancer treatment money could buy now. His doctors were optimistic. I'd paid off my student loans in a single transaction. I had enough left over to buy a small house with no mortgage. But more than the money, I had something else. My reputation back. My career back. My life back. The company offered me my old position with a 40% raise and a director title. I declined. I didn't want to work for people who'd thrown me under the bus to protect themselves. Instead, I took the consulting contract they'd offered as part of the settlement. I'd redesign their security systems, train their staff, and charge them triple my old hourly rate. After that was done, I was free to work for whoever I wanted, that I had offers. Word had spread about what happened. Other companies wanted someone who couldn't be bought, couldn't be intimidated, and knew how to find the truth even when powerful people wanted it buried. I accepted a position as Director of Security Operations at a competing firm. Better pay, better culture, and most importantly, a CEO who'd personally called to say, "We need people who do the right thing even when it's hard." 6 months after everything fell apart, I walked into a courtroom for Derek's criminal trial. I'd been subpoenaed to testify about the security vulnerabilities I'd discovered and the report I'd sent Derek. He looked smaller than I remembered. Gray. Deflated. His lawyer had tried to argue he was just supplementing his income, that the data theft wasn't that serious. The prosecution had destroyed that argument by presenting evidence that Derek's actions had led to identity theft, financial fraud, and substantial harm to real people. When it was my turn to testify, I walked to the stand with my head high. I wasn't nervous. I was ready. The prosecutor asked me about my discovery of the backdoor override. About my report to Derek. About what happened after I told the truth, simply and clearly. I didn't embellish. Didn't need to. The facts were damning enough. Derek's lawyer tried to cross-examine me, suggesting I'd somehow been in on the scheme and only turned against Derek when I got caught. Didn't work. My documentation was too thorough. My timeline too airtight. My testimony too consistent. The jury didn't even leave the room for long. Guilty on all counts. Derek got 8 years in federal prison. Trevor got 6. I felt nothing watching them being led away in handcuffs. Not triumph. Not satisfaction. Just a quiet sense of closure. A year after the nightmare began, I was invited to speak at a cybersecurity conference. The topic was insider threats, when colleagues become criminals. I'd never been comfortable with public speaking, but this felt important. If my story could help even one person recognize the warning signs, it was worth it. The auditorium was packed. I stood at the podium, looking out at hundreds of faces, and started with the truth. A year ago, I was accused of a crime I didn't commit. My supervisor tried to destroy my career to cover up his own criminal activity. For weeks, I thought my life was over. I walked them through what happened. The ambush meeting. The pressure to confess. The feeling of being utterly alone against a system that had already decided I was guilty. Then I talked about what saved me. Documentation. Keeping records. Trusting my instincts when something felt wrong. Having the courage to fight back even when the odds seemed impossible. The thing about truth, I said, is that it's stubborn. You can bury it, ignore it, try to discredit it. But if you're patient and persistent, truth has a way of surfacing. You just have to be brave enough to bring it into the light. The applause was thunderous. Afterwards, dozens of people came up to thank me, to share their own stories of workplace injustice, to say they felt less alone knowing someone had fought back and won. That's when I realized something important. This wasn't just about me anymore. I never went back to working for someone else full-time. Instead, I built something new. A consulting firm specializing in security audits and insider threat detection. But more than that, I created a resource for employees who found themselves in situations like mine. Falsely accused, gaslit, pressured to take blame for someone else's crimes. The firm grew faster than I expected. Apparently, there were a lot of people who needed help but didn't know where to turn. I hired Simone as our general counsel. Marcus left his old job to join as a senior analyst. Even Tyler from physical security came aboard, bringing expertise in surveillance systems and evidence preservation. We called it Sentinel Solutions. Our tagline: when integrity matters more than politics. Within 2 years, we were handling cases across the country. Whistleblowers who'd been retaliated against. Employees framed for data breaches they didn't commit. People who'd discovered fraud and been punished for speaking up. We won most of our cases. Not all. Some situations were too complex, some evidence too circumstantial. But we won enough. Enough to make a difference. Enough to give people their lives back. Them why Father called us the good guys. He was in remission now, healthy enough to visit the office and embarrass me by telling anyone who'd listen how proud he was of his daughter. I didn't mind. After everything that happened, embarrassment felt like a luxury. Sometimes I think about that moment in the conference room. Derek's confident smile. Amanda's fake sympathy. The certainty in their voices that I would break, confess, disappear quietly. They'd underestimated me. Assumed that because I was young, because I was scared, because I didn't have power, I'd be easy to crush. They were wrong. Not because I was particularly brave. Not because I was brilliant or special. But because I'd kept records, asked questions, and refused to accept a lie just because powerful people were telling it. That's the thing about bullies. They count on silence, on compliance, on victims being too afraid to fight back. But sometimes the person they choose to victimize refuses to stay quiet. And when that happens, when the truth finally comes out, their entire world collapses. Derek lost everything. His career, his freedom, his reputation. All because he thought he could commit crimes with impunity and frame someone else when he got caught.